this was the lesson we've just completed. Excuse me. And talking about values, I'm on this trying to create paintings or drawings that look like paintings thing, where atmosphere is I don't think this was the atmosphere one, but it might have been. I think there's another one. But it was about basically creating the presence, which ultimately is about light, and light is values, right? So whether or not this is an interesting thing, whether or not the values are used to create form, or whether or not they're used to create atmosphere, i.e. the way the light plays on the background and all the rest of it, it's still values if you want to get into that. Personally, I'm a little bit wary of using the word values. For me, they're just tones. They're just tonal. Value is the measure of a tone, isn't it? So to me, they're just tonal differences, and the balance between the tones is the critical thing for me. So I've got to, we're just on this, and basically I was talking about simulating tones without getting bogged down by the usual sort of graduated scale thing, which is really the thing is that my bag, if you like, is that if you have to think about how it's happening, why it's happening, then you're not doing it properly. You can see what's happening. Why do you have to know what's happening? Why do you have to know that when light hits a surface it does this, that and the other? Why? You can see. Perspective. You can see trees get smaller further away. Why? Why do you need to know its perspective? I was drawing trees that got smaller as they went further away before I even knew what perspective was. Never knew what an ellipse was until I went to college and did the technical illustration thing. But an ellipse is a circle in perspective, and I didn't know at the time, but I could draw them because I could see them. And that skill of being able to draw what I see was what I used when I did my exam in City and Guilds technical illustration. Didn't bother with ellipse guides or even travel methods. I just drew ellipses because that's what I could do. Because I can see what an ellipse shape is, what that shape is. Let's not even call it an ellipse. So it's the same with values. Why do you need to know how and control how it blends? All right, if you want to copy photographs, I understand. You want to copy a photograph. You want to make it look like a monochrome photograph. Fine. Then perhaps you would need to understand. But even then, you're looking at a photograph. The thing is that when people draw in charcoal, they often draw from black and white. Wrong thing to do, right? Because what that does, two things happen. It takes away a lot of the middle tones that you see in a colour image. And those are the decisions that you need to make, not the software, and not even. I mean, if it's a film, it's different. Continuous tone is different to digital tones. So, if it's continuous tone, maybe, but even then, working from black and white is never a good idea. But this idea that you must know how tones work in order to create something, to respond to what you see is, for me, is a real problem. It kind of, observation is all it's about, and as soon as you stop looking and you start relying on your knowledge, then that's when it goes to pot. Because all you're going to do is you're going to chase the production. You're going to chase those skills that are required to produce. You're going to chase the techniques. And you get locked into all of that thing, and it becomes knowledge and technique. That's all it becomes. It's never your response. So this, as I say, was an example, and I was trying to say, look, it doesn't matter how I simulate tones, as long as you get the impression of form. I'm trying to render how light shapes the forms. Or forms the shapes. That's what I'm trying to do, and it's not really. It's an observational thing. It's not me understanding. Oh, this is the light. It's there, and it's going to do this and that. I don't care. I really don't care about that stuff. What I care about is capturing what I see, and what I feel about what I see. That's what I care about. And it's a completely different. It almost goes against the idea of having value scales and understanding about. I draw in shapes and tone, right? That's what I draw in shapes and tones. That's all I draw in. I don't draw in lines that I'm going to colour in with values. I just draw in shapes and tones, and this is one from this morning before the lesson, and and there are varying degrees. So I'm going to do one now which is going to be even less, hopefully, even less about perfect graduations and all that kind of thing. Not that that is a problem. It's just that it's a consequence. It's not really I'm going to draw this guy. One of the beards left over from the other day. In fact, we've got loads of beards left over, so I'm probably going to draw a few of these intermittently. It gets a bit tedious drawing beards all the time. But let me get the things in the right place before I start talking about stuff and then lose it. Yeah, I've chosen this really because there you go. It's there, done it. I just put the eyes where they should be. There's an eye there. There's an eye there. Eyebrow. Let me just. There you go. Done. I've chosen this because I can get away with much more freer marks, and I'm trying to talk about the unnecessary complications of tonal values. It just seems to me far too complicated. I think it all seems far too complicated. Drawing full stop, portraits and stuff. Anything really. It's all this academic sort of procedures. It's like, it's drawing, for goodness sake. That's what it is. It's drawing. It's a response to, well, it should be response to trying to copy something is a different matter. But if we're not talking about copying the world, we're talking about and replicating the world that you see. We're talking about responding to the world that you see. It's a different matter. Obviously, you're going to want to be able to, if realism is the way you respond, you're going to want to be able to understand about the light aspects of it. But you'll see those things. You'll see how the light plays with the shapes. You'll see how it forms the shapes. You can see all that. You don't need to know. But for me, it's a bit of a trap. It's a bit of a I don't know if it's a myth as such, but it is definitely a thing that's ingrained within doing this. It's not a sorry, I just thought somebody was at the door. It's something that's we're told. We're told that's how it is. I think I would have been told, certainly with the City and Guilds thing, because I remember all the cross-hatching exercise and all that kind of thing, which was all about trying to create something, give something a form. Drawing cylinders, the way that you drew cylinders was the number of lines. The counter, when you drew a cylinder, so we're doing pipes, from engineering sort of drawing stuff, and the way that you drew the thick to thin lines that went round the cylinder to create the idea that it was a cylinder, a tube. All of that, that's the kind of knowledge, and that's fine for illustrations. For an illustrator to know all that kind of thing. We don't need that for us. We don't need to do that. We don't need to follow some kind of recipe, which is what that was. It was a recipe. It was so many lines, because they counted when you did the exam. They'd count the way that the number of lines that you'd use to define the cylinder, the tube. But with this, as I say, you can see already there are tonal values at work already. You can see the tones that are there. So what is it that I need to know how to blend things? The thing about the tonal side of it as well is that when you're creating, as you can see, I kind of apply some kind of tone line effect. It's not strictly a flat tone but I'm creating some kind of tonal value by doing this. So let me get the distances right here. His ear's about here. Right, about there. Yeah, it's about there. So as I said, what I'm doing is I'm looking for. Initially, I'm not interested in tones. I'm not interested in the tonal value of things. I'm more interested in the shapes, right? So as I'm finding these shapes, I'm using tones rather than, oh well, that's the edge of there, that's there. I'm doing that. So I'm finding the shapes with tone. It happens that it's a kind of a shortcut, I suppose. I'm applying a level of tone which is not far from the actual tone it will be in the end. It's not meant to be, but it just so happens, because I'm doing that often now, that the values are kind of where they should be whilst I'm finding the shapes. So, but that's just a consequence. It doesn't have to be like that. You can just be just loosely finding the shapes, and then worry about the tonal values later. One of the things that will happen is that as I'm doing this, is that you'll get unevenness in the tones, and and when that happens, you can, if you're not careful, as long as you're aware of it's doing that, but when it happens, you've got to be careful that it doesn't affect the way that you see, because the values of things can throw out your visual comparison. That's the thing. If it's a bit too dark in somewhere, if it's too dark with something that you're using as a relational point of some kind, if it's too dark, it will throw out your. Sorry, I'm trying to get this to feel right. It will throw out your measurements, but it's just a relational thing. It's not any kind of comparative thing. It is, but it's not in the same way that people talk about, one anchor and all the rest of it. It's not that. So, let's say that's about right where everything is now. The next thing after this for me, it's not about. I mean, it is about applying tone, but it's about building up the shapes. Defining the shapes with light. So tone, if you like. That's the next stage. So I'm once I've got things roughly where I need them to be, then I can focus a little more on the tonal aspects of it. Still not considering that graduation tonal scale thingy, whatever that's all about. I don't feel I need to be doing that or understand any of that. Mid-tones and half-tones and dark tones and all that sort of thing. It's not, it's really not. Let me just talk about it in one place. This is an example, and I was doing it this morning, in that eye. You see that eye there? No drawing in that eye at all. No much drawing in that, but that is just shapes. It's just the way the light's hitting, and I've created the depth of that just by identifying the shapes between things, the shapes around things, and there is a tonal depth to it. So none of that is drawing. That's just shapes, and I'm going to do the same on this eye, right? So, but none of this is about tonal values. This is all about, I see a darker tone there, and I see a shape there. So I'm going to apply more tone to it, and that's basically what I'm doing. It wants taken away across the top there, for instance, and That's really all it's about for me. It's not about this understanding the tones around here and what's happening with this eyelid and things. It's completely observation driven. You see, the thing is that I can't understand why people wouldn't understand that it's observation that is the key to all of this. Because with the observation you see tones, you see shapes, you see colour, you see the relationships with other objects. It's all about observation. Develop good observational skills, and the rest of it just falls into place. And even that's not particularly difficult to do. It's certainly not a formulaic thing. See, there are times by not adhering to any kind of tonal application formula thing. There are times when, like I showed you on the girl's cheek, when it's enough. You know, this is the question this morning with this one, and we're talking about this one. You know, that's the important bit of this drawing. That's kind of secondary, and this is just a support. So, do I have to put a lot of tonal manipulation in that? No, just enough. Just enough. It's the just enough thing. Just enough so you can see what I see. It's that. I don't need to actually describe. This is the thing about the suggestion application thing. You don't need to describe everything, because people can see already. They've seen beards before. They've seen hair before. They've seen a knitted jumper before. They don't need you to tell them exactly what, you know, unless it's an illustration. This is the thing. If it's an illustration, fair enough. You want to tell them exactly what it looks like if it's an illustration. But if it's just you telling people or telling the viewer what it is that you see in this scene, in this face, it's just enough to be able to see, to be able to communicate that. That's the thing. I mean, there's all kinds of complications when you allow yourself to fall into the trap of it has to be done like this. You know, you have to know about how the light hits this. You have to know about the planes of the face. Once you start all of that kind of, you have to know about how to use charcoal. You have to know about oil paints. Once you're into those areas, you're kind of trapped within it. You're trapped with it. It becomes all about the knowledge and all about the practice and all about, you know, relentlessness. Where's the joy? Where's the just sheer joy of doing it? It's lost amongst all the requirements. You must do it like this. If it's not done like this, it's not right. You know, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I get that all the time. You know, what I do is not proper. It's not. You know, I can't draw, kind of thing. I don't care, because what does it mean? When someone says that to me, what does that mean? I maybe can't draw like some of the great academic types, but I'm not bothered. They can't draw like me. But as I'm drawing all these things, I'm adding all these elements to it. There is naturally a tonal, you know, evolves tonally as I'm doing it. And there are things that are happening, you know, things that are happening that I like and may not get any further than what I can see already. And I'll tell you what that is. I'll tell you why that's like it is. It's because this is a discovery. This is me discovering what it is that I see in this face. What moves me to want to draw it. This is what this is. And as I discover these things, rather than plan them, because I've practiced it and I've decided how it's going to be, because I discover these things, it's a wonderment. And that's the thing. It's whatever there's wonder in what you do, and you're surprised, like the guy I said the other week. He just wants to surprise himself every time he works, every time he creates something. He wants that element of surprise. That's what you want. You ain't going to get that if you planned it and you worked out exactly where the tones are going to be. What tone's going to be what. You're not going to get any kind of surprises with that, because it's going to be exactly the same every time. And this is the crux of it, right? I see people who follow the rules, that do what I'm talking about with the tones, but also in terms of the structure of the face. And no matter what the subject, they do capture a likeness, but every drawing they do, face mostly portraits, they look the same. There's just something, people call that a style, I know, but there is just something that makes them all look the same. It's not what you want. You want the variance, you want this, you want extremes of this, because you want that kind of extreme from there to there. You want that, because that's what moved me. That drawing moved me to draw it like that. That drawing moved me to draw it like that. That's the thing. That shows that I'm connected to the subject. I used to think that every time I painted, everything was different. What's going off? It's because when I look at something, I respond to what I see. And every face is different, and every face has a different mood. And that's what drives it. So all this formulaic stuff, tones should be done in this way, and bone structure should be done this way, and the head shape should be this, and divided by whatever. That's just not going to work for me. It's just not going to work for me. And then you'll get people that say you can apply something like Loomis to any shape of head, and whatever. And so what? That's not a desirable thing. You're still going to draw a Loomis head. But as I said, the tone thing is a particular. It's a bit like colours, then people say, how do you mix flesh tones thing? It's that. The outcome from all of that sort of approach is a predictable and expected outcome. And to those people who do it, that's exactly as it should be. But should it? Shouldn't it be, as I said, different every time? Every time you paint a face, you should be moved to paint them in a way that's unique to them. Just because you've got certain skills, I don't think that you'd lose the basic observation and dexterity skills. But all the other stuff that turns it into a formula and a production, you don't want them, because there's just going to be another production. You look at it. You look at the traditional portrait artists, and every one of their work is just somebody sat against a black background with a bunch of flowers in the foreground. Miserable, absolutely miserable work. But that's how people perceive it to be, and everybody coming to making portraits will think of it in that way. But I'm telling you now, those people will never be remembered. There will just be people that were very good at making corporate type portraits. That's not special. People can learn to do that. There are too many people who do that and call themselves portrait artists, and it sets the tones. How is this? I'm talking about with the tones, the values this morning. You hear it so often that you think it's how it should be, but it can be whatever you want it to be, and that's the secret. That's the thing. Whatever this turns out like, it's my thing, right? It's my thing. Not somebody else's. I don't have to do it like somebody else. I just have to make sure that I fulfill my objective, which is this, being able to capture the essence of someone. That's all that. That's all that I need to do. You can see now how the tones, by the way, are building. It's. I am working on the tones. I am looking at it and thinking about tones, but I'm also thinking about the locations of things, and it's the tones that I'm using to qualify the locations. And because it's everything all at once, there will come a point where I don't need to do any more than what I've done. It's one of those situations. It's a bit like the one this morning. It's a bit like the girl with the the jumper on. It's a bit like that. I know I don't need to. If whatever I do to that, it won't affect that. You know what I mean? It's a matter of hierarchy. I think this morning, it was my birthday today, so Jackson gave me a birthday card. And Jackson can draw anything. He could draw anything before he went to art college and while he was at school. It was just it was something I showed him how to do when he was at primary school, and I think a lot to do with the way he thinks about doing it, and obviously that comes from me. And he drew a scene, a typical impressionistic scene. And looking at it, it was in perspective, and it was a street scene. And we were talking about the understanding the order of things. Now this is something that you'll hear Paul Ingbertson talking about, the visual order, and I always think of it in terms of the hierarchy of things. So there is a hierarchy. I mean, in terms of perspective, it's just things get smaller further away, or they get lighter, or whatever. And it's that understanding things like that, the hierarchy of things, the visual order, as Paul would call it. Understanding that's what it's about. So if you apply visual order to the way that you see tones, and the objects of the face or the portrait, then it's a completely different thing. You're drawing in a different way. You're not drawing, I'm going to draw this eye now, and I need to draw this eye in a certain way. You're drawing everything all at once. You're observing the order of things and allowing the order of things to determine what you focus on. The other side to that is that you're driven, you're moved to draw or paint something. That is the ultimate order. It's whatever it was that made you want to draw or paint that thing is the thing that drives. It's the main focus. It may be an object. It may just be the feeling of the emotional aspect of it. But it's that is ultimately the thing that drives your drawing or painting, and that is the thing that you would focus on. Now that would determine how you treat the tones, whether or not the tones are working effectively, or the way you treat them is working effectively. It would drive all of that. But if you want to just talk about it in practical terms, it would be something like the visual order. So there's lots of tonal, and I wanted to do something like this because of this, what I'm talking about now. There's lots of tonal values, if you like, that are being simulated on it, that are all working in harmony as they should do, but none of them are deliberate tones. None of them are sort of blended from one to another, this sort of usual sort of thing that goes from dark to mid and all the rest of it. None of them are doing that, and a lot of it's just incidental. It's almost like it's just part of the mark making process. So I'm going to leave it at that, because I think that it's doing what I wanted to do. I don't want it to be about the how well I blend the tones, because that's kind of what I'm trying not to show. I don't want people to think that it's how well I can blend something, because that's what this sort of thing is. I'm not in the kind of area of photo replication, so I'm not trying to blend or smooth or but it's still tonal manipulation, quite slow and delicate stuff. But the same thing happens with this. It's still got form, regardless of how well I've actually applied the charcoal. There's nothing to do with whether it's smooth or it's perfectly blended. None of that is irrelevant to it, but it still works. There's still shape to the face. That's the thing. That's what I'm trying to get to. So I'm not going to go much further than this. I've done them when they've just been nothing more than a scribble, and people have said that's a scribble. But that's kind of what it's about for me. I'm not, this spontaneous response thing is at the root of what I do. And when I start slowing down I still try and keep some of that spontaneous response. So I'm not going to go much further than this now. I'm going to leave it at this and just tidy things up. The hair, for instance, which will get those a little bit more rounder, the curls and things. Just put those in with a rubber, I think, just to make it work a bit better. But other than that, no, I'm not going to touch any more on it. I'll stick on the socials and then you can have a look. But as I said, I wanted to do a beard because this is the kind of thing that you can do with a beard better than if it was a opaline, perfect face, a female. It's a little bit more difficult. Still, the same applies. I mean, I don't think it would make that much difference, but it's just so obvious with something like this. Right.